Have you ever noticed that as soon as you want to start manifesting something, it becomes really, really evident that you don't have this thing in your life? So I am always talking on this channel about the power of desire and about how important our desires are to us as spiritual creatures. But our desire can come with a downside, and if we think about desire in the wrong way, it can lead to a lot of suffering in the process. So today I am going to tell you how we can reach a balance between desire and suffering so that you don't get stuck in this place of feeling like you are not worthy or deserving of what you are manifesting. So if that sounds like a video that you need, then be sure to keep watching. What's up, baby angel? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jen. I am a spiritual life and business coach. I am also the best-selling author of The Mindful Witch and CEO of The Aligned Life. And I'd love to welcome you aboard today. This is my YouTube channel, and it is where I create a brand new free training for you every single week, all with the intent of helping you to change your mindset so that you can go out there and create the life of your dreams. I talk a lot on here about mindset and manifestation, and I use those tools together to help you to achieve the things that you are actually brought here to do on this earth. Most of us are kept down by our human thoughts, and I'm going to help you to get a little bit on the other side of that and to bring some more joy into your life in general. So if that sounds like something you are interested in, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button. So as I said at the top, today we are talking about how to balance desire and suffering. It might sound like a weird thing to even think about those two things in the same breath, but actually our desires, if we think about them in the wrong way, like so many of us do, can lead to suffering. So before we get into the bulk of what I wanted to speak about today, let's just talk first about desire and how important it is to understand that there are only two ways that desire really happens for us. When we desire something, we either desire something that we don't have, or we desire not to have something that we do have. But in either of those cases, what we are really saying is that we are not happy with where we are. We are not happy with some element in our current life. So the first point I want to make is just talking about desire itself, and my perspective as a spiritual life and business coach is to teach that desire is super important. There is a distinction I want to make here between fleeting desire and actual real soul desire, but I'll get to that in the next point. But what I really want to talk about right now is the fact that desire is something that is unique to everybody, and we are all given a sort of certain set of desires. And to me, following those desires is exactly what helps us to become more truly authentic to ourselves. The very fact that we don't have all the same desires, it kind of makes me think of desire as being something that is given to you like a gift or like a sacred purpose. That doesn't necessarily mean we are going to achieve everything that we've desired, but every desire that we go after is going to lead us down a certain path. And the further down the path we go, the more alternate paths will open up. But I believe that saying yes to this desire and following ourselves down the path, that is how we learn more about who we are supposed to be and the mission that we are supposed to have on this planet. I know that so many people still contact me and they really want help with determining what their life purpose is. If you are in that state of not understanding what your purpose is and feeling a little bit lost because of it, I would definitely recommend you start listening to your desires. And again, your real core soul desires, not your fleeting desires. Most of us were still raised in this very puritanical way of looking at the world, where, when you were a little kid, or at least when I was a little kid, I was taught not to be too greedy, not to ask too much, not to become too big for my britches, whatever that means. And I think especially as a girl or as a woman, we are socialized not to speak up for what we want or to go after what we want. We are socialized to put other people first, to think of others first, which is not a bad thing. But if we're not thinking about ourselves ever, that can lead to us always putting our desires last and can even get to the point where we don't even know what our desires are. Have you ever met somebody that doesn't know what their desires are and you ask them a simple question like, what do you want to eat for dinner? And they say, whatever you want. Like sometimes that's fine. Sometimes it's fine to do the mental labor of doing all the thinking for everybody. But at a certain point, I personally find that very frustrating when I'm around somebody that will never give me an opinion. So if that is resonating with you, or even if it's not resonating with you, I think what I'm talking about in this video today is going to help you out so much. So again, just to recap this part, I reframe desire to be a sacred thing that we all have. And if you are out of touch with that for whatever reason, this is your sign right here, right now, watching this video, that it is time to get reacquainted with that desire inside of you, and not to fear it, not to be afraid of it, not to run away from it, not to downplay it, and to really just own it and to see where this beautiful journey begins to take you. The second thing that I want to discuss in regards to desire is the fact that I already just touched on, the fact that we all have these sort of deep core desires, but we also have the more fleeting, pleasurable things. And on the surface, we might not be able to determine which one is which. So I just want to make this really clear that every time I'm talking about desire, I am meaning the deeper stuff. I am not meaning going out and partying or shopping or drinking or whatever else the pleasurable short-term desire is. Those things can be fun. They definitely aren't all wrong. You can definitely experience both as part of your life, but it's the deeper stuff that is going to bring you more joy and more happiness if you pursue that. Fleeting pleasure is always going to feel good in the moment, but it is not going to make us feel good over time. Whereas true desire, when we move towards the things that we are attracted to on a sort of deeper level, those things will give us pleasure over a longer period of time. Even though there are moments during the journey that don't feel good, even though it might take us a lot of work in order to get there, these things will still add up and they will help us to feel better. Or another way we could describe the difference between these two things is serotonin versus dopamine. Serotonin is a long-term happiness. That is the stuff that brings us happiness over a longer period of time. Whereas dopamine is like you looking at your Facebook notifications. It's a sort of short-term, very addictive pleasure hormone. And we have both of them in our head, and both of them are fine. There's not anything morally wrong with them. But again, if we keep chasing after the short-term pleasure and ignoring the longer-term happiness, we are never going to create that balance between the two things in our life. So again, just to recap, there's a difference, a massive difference between the desire that is our soul desire and our fleeting pleasurable desire. And it's really important that we all learn how to figure out which one is which so we don't start to go down the wrong path. But a good life has both serotonin and dopamine. So you can go find your balance and see how that works for you. But I definitely recommend focusing your longer term attention and planning on your serotonin desires. Okay, with all of that being said, now I'm getting to what I really wanted to talk about today. So when this topic came to mind for this week, I really just wanted to talk about the immediate discomfort that occurs when we realize there is something in our world that we want. So that might sound super basic, but again, I think a lot of people lean away sometimes from admitting the things that they want because they don't want to have to admit it, to have to go down the process of creating it, or to have to say goodbye to something that they have in their life. What I want to say to that is that once you know the truth and once you recognize the truth in yourself, the truth doesn't go away, the truth doesn't change. I have definitely been that person at certain points in my life that was living in denial and not really wanting to admit how some things were not making me happy anymore. And I can just say that with the wisdom that came from going through some of the things I experienced, that when you notice something is wrong, you can't magic it away. It is not going to go away from you just not doing anything. You are either going to have to drastically change your perception and do all the inner work that is involved with that, or you're going to have to change your situation in some way. But both of these things are just more opportunities for you to grow and ultimately for you to create a life that really lights you up. If you start to ignore your life for too long, this leads to that symptom that I've had before, where you feel like you just woke up one day and you look around at your life and you're like, how did I get here? What part of this was even me? And I can think of an example of this when I read the book Eat, Pray, Love, or watched the movie Eat, Pray, Love, when Liz Gilbert is feeling that feeling of like, I built this life, so why isn't it making me happy? That's because she started building a life that did make her happy, but it wasn't meant to make her happy forever. At a certain point, she had to admit that there was an issue and then go out there and create the new life. So that is just what I want to caution you towards. The things that are broken or the things that you want but you don't want to admit to yourself, they aren't going anywhere, and you can pretend to hide that part of yourself for as long as you want to. But in that interim time, you are just not living as your authentic self, and you are cutting yourself off from the potential happiness that you could have. When you put it like that, I think it becomes very clear. I know it's a lot easier to say when you're not in the middle of it, but your happiness is so important. And that's ultimately why I make all these trainings for you guys. So be an advocate for your happiness and remember that it is important, no matter how scary it is. Okay, the next point I want to make today in talking about desire versus suffering is that this is a symptom that happens to so many of us, and it happens without us even noticing. And really what this is a way of perfectionism thinking. The way perfectionist thinking messes up most of us is that we create this amazing story, and really it's a story, it's a fantasy in our mind about how achieving this thing will be so much better than where we are. So can you relate to that? When you think about something that you are manifesting and you're thinking about you being your future self with this thing in your hand, are you imagining that in this future vision of you, there will be no more sadness, no more self-doubt, no more fear, and everything will just be easy all the time? I know I have thought like this, and when I talk about it like that, of course it sounds kind of funny, but we tend to create these stories in our mind without even realizing the ridiculousness of them. So when I talk about this stuff, people are like, oh, well, don't rain on my parade, or why would you say that about my manifestation? I am going to feel great all the time. No, the thing is, you won't. You won't feel good all the time. You will feel differently. You will be a slightly different person, but you are still going to have the same sort of issues that you have right now. When we believe that somewhere else is better than where we are not letting ourselves enjoy where we are. So I can think of so many examples of this, like, oh, when I graduate from university, I'm never going to feel stressed again. Or the really common one with relationships is thinking that when you get married, all of your problems are going to go away. And when I always bring up this example, I suggest you go ask any married person if all their problems went away. Of course, the answer is no. So when we get really wrapped up in this story of there being better than here, we also sort of doom ourselves to not being fully happy, to not being able to live life the way we really want to, because we think we can't do that until we get there. We don't really realize that the direction we're going and the journey we're going on is not leading to this place of perfection, where nothing ever hurts us ever again, where everything goes our way, where we never feel fear or self-doubt. That doesn't happen. These things can lessen and we can change our relationship to them, but they still come up because we are still going to be human. And when we fall into this perfectionist way of thinking, we are devaluing our current moment, and that is what leads to suffering. So while I don't want you to get too much in the other side and to start to think about all the problems this new level of you is going to have, I do want you to sort of go there and to start to consider that. Not because I want you to get stuck in that mindset of, oh, when I get there, it's going to suck anyway, so what's the point? But more like I can create this amazing thing in my life. I can manifest this whole new level for myself. I'm still going to be me, and I'm still going to go after that, but I'm still going to be human, and things are still going to go wrong. I'm going to have bad days. The whole rest of the human experience comes along with me, because that's just you. That's you being a human. When you opt out of the perfectionist mindset, that is when you can realize that here isn't any worse than there. There isn't any better than here. So if there isn't any better than here, then why not enjoy this moment? Why not be okay with this? Recognizing that you are lacking in a certain area doesn't mean that you have to not enjoy it. Okay, so the next point I wanted to talk about is the whole concept of lack when it comes to desire, which is sort of what I touched on in the very beginning. But what happens for so many of us is that as soon as we can name something, as soon as we figure out what our desire is, it becomes so clear that we don't have that thing right now. And so instead of getting focused on how we can create this and how we can manifest that, sometimes we get stuck in the lack. So sometimes we just start to get really hung up on the fact that we don't have this thing, that we're not there yet, that we didn't do this, we didn't achieve that. And that can feel really terrible. The thing I want to offer you about that is that lack is just here for contrast. And so if you already had everything, had achieved everything, and didn't have anywhere else to go in your life would be pretty boring. So I know that when we notice something is missing that we want, we tend to make up some weird story about that, about how we're not deserving of it or how we're not worthy of it. But I would challenge you to really sit with that and think about that and start to reframe this. And the way I like to reframe basically everything in life is to think about everything as a video game. So in my video game analogy, I'm always thinking of old school Mario. Mario is running down the course. Mario jumps off of a rock and Mario accidentally falls into a cavern and dies. So you're running, you go through the race, you make a misstep and you fall on your face or you die, basically. The next time you go through that level, you're not going to do the same thing again. You're going to do something differently. Every video game that we play, we have an objective. We are going to rescue somebody. We are going to find something. We are on a mission to do something. And that is the exact same thing in your life. Just think about how boring your life would be if you didn't have something to work towards. Personally, for me, this lesson has come up a lot during this last year of Corona times. But one of the things that I really love to have in my life that I never even really thought about loving to have that much is having something to look forward to. So when you don't have something to look forward to, your future isn't as bright and shiny and full of potential as it could be. So I want you to think about your lack in that term. If you didn't have this goal to work towards, if you didn't have this adventure to go on, if there wasn't an objective to this game that you're playing, you wouldn't really be playing a game. You'd just be wasting time, kicking a ball around, I don't know, doing whatever you would in a video game if there was no objective. The point is, we are all on a journey. We don't get to know what the journey looks like ahead of time. We don't get to decide when it ends. We don't get to decide how windy it's going to be. All we need to understand is that we are on a journey. And part of you manifesting and becoming a conscious creator is you picking your own end for this journey. You're going to be going somewhere. You might as well aim it towards where you want to go. Because on the other side of that, if you just give up on life, don't declare your desires, and want your life to stay the same forever, something will inevitably change. Something will change eventually. As a conscious creator, you are just taking more of this into your control and controlling more of your ultimate destination. The joy is in the journey. The joy is in the process. The joy is in the transformation. So you might as well get excited about that. Not stuck in the lack, not focused on what you don't have, but excited about what you get to create. Okay, and the final point that I wanted to bring you today, this touches on what I was just speaking about, but this perfectionist way of thinking. Many of us get stuck in this, again, without even realizing it. But we create some sort of story about how much better life is going to be once we get to a certain place. But we also tell ourselves that we cannot feel happiness, true happiness. We cannot feel true worthiness. We cannot feel all the things that we want to feel until we get there. So that is a really common way of looking at the world. In fact, I'm going to suggest this is the default. We have been told that we cannot feel successful until we get the job. We cannot feel accomplished until we get the award or whatever that is. So you come over here into the spiritual manifestation world and I turn that whole thing on its head. And in fact, I'm here to tell you that the way you think about yourself is what creates those results. Basically, if you think that you cannot be happy until you get this thing, until you manifest this thing, and you are waiting and waiting and waiting for this thing to show up so you can feel happy, you are catching yourself in this catch-22, this infinite loop of never getting there, waiting to get there, never getting there. So what happens if we can turn that whole thing on its head, realize that your thoughts are ultimately projecting into your reality? What if you can start to be that person who has that feeling, whatever feeling it is that you want, who has that feeling now? What would it be like to have that happiness, that confidence, that feeling of success? What would it feel like to be that person now? The more resistance you have to this, the more I suggest you double down and really do this stuff. And this is exactly why mindset work is so important to the world of manifestation. I'm here to teach you how to create the results that you want by using this. And that requires a little bit of faith. That requires faith in your belief more than in the thing. So just one more time, if you are waiting to manifest something in order to step into that next level self, you are essentially just trapping yourself from ever getting what you want. The trick is always to come back and to start to create that now. So again, if you have fallen into this perfectionist line of thinking, or if you're punishing yourself, thinking you have to somehow motivate yourself to keep going, and you can't be happy until you get there, you really need to check in with that. You need to check in with how that feels inside of you. Does that feel good? Do you want to feel like that? Do you want to have these self-punishing thoughts? Is that working for you? And if it isn't, what would it be like if you could just let yourself go there and feel the things that you want right now? Okay, so that is all of my thoughts that I have for you right now on the topic of desire versus suffering. So I hope you can see how, yet again, it is ultimately our perceptions of everything that can either bring us peace or they can bring us calm, confidence, happiness, all the things that we want. If we perceive our desires as something to be fixed, if we perceive our desires that are something that are wrong, we are not going to be happy with the process, or we are not going to be happy with ourselves during the process. So I ask you to take these thoughts that I brought you today and apply them to your own life and to see just how much easier the whole journey becomes from this practice. So that is it for today's training. I'd love to thank you so much for watching this, especially if you watched to the end. I would really love to know who made it this far. So if you're still here, go ahead and drop me a comment, desire, down below. I just love to see who stuck it out for this journey. There are no coincidences, and that means there was something important in this message today that you were meant to hear. So I sincerely hope you take this practice with you, apply it to your life, and be sure to come back and let me know how it worked out for you. If you appreciated this video, go ahead and leave me a like. And other than that, I will be back here in next week's training. So until then, I'm wishing you so much self-love and happy manifesting, and I will see you then.